reduce the amount of energy we use. The one thing we also need to keep in mind, and I found this out myself, I have confined livestock feedlot, the amount of fertilizer that I purchase because of that has really decreased. And we all know where fertilizer comes as a source of energy. So we, aside from just the solar issues, farmers across the state, I think, are making great strides, and we continue to work at adopting new technologies that enable us to continue to reduce the amount of energy we use. I realize you really came today to hear about our solar projects, so I'll walk you through a little bit the process by which I went through. First, you have to decide if you're going to do one, and there's many different reasons. And what's a good reason for me might be a poor reason for you. But some of the reasons are whether or not you want to use a cleaner source of energy, the sun versus coal or whatever. Whether or not you want to have a renewable energy source. Whether or not you want to use if this is important to you, a greener source or one that doesn't emit carbons. Those are some of the reasons. Or another reason is simply you hope you'll be able to save yourself some money in the long run by using solar for electricity. And some of those reasons are combinations of the reasons I decided I wanted to put up solar panels. I put up a 28 kVW. It stands on the ground or sits on the ground, whatever, on pillars, and it's on one of my farms. The important thing you always keep in mind is that unless you're going to a battery system, you still need your local REC or your private or public alliance or whoever it is. And we have to remember, as solar installers, solar users, solar panel owners, we have to keep this relationship between them. Because you know as well as I do at night, they're not producing too much from moonlight. And that's when you're using your REC. And so we have to be prepared to also pay our electric bills so that they can keep up their infrastructure. Then you look at, well, who do I want to use for an installer? And we have many good installers. I went with no one for me. I went with Perry Novak Electric because he was my electrician. I've worked with him before. I'm not saying he's better or worse than any of the others. It was just I knew him and I knew how they did their work. And I wanted a system, or I wanted someone to put in a system for me that would basically be a turnkey. I'm busy. I farm and some other things, and I didn't want to have to bird dog this and run after that, and I understood with working with John that, basically he took care of everything. He filed the forms for the state tax credit, and he figured out the appropriate size and got the information from the RECs so that I was able to keep on doing my usual things. So that was important to me. I have a panel monitoring system on mine. It allows, if during the winter time it snows and like some of the panels are covered with snow, the ones that aren't covered continue to produce, where if it was a single line system, if one panel is not able to produce, the entire array does not produce. It's a little bit higher cost, but it also enables me to produce more electricity that way. There's a 25-year warranty on the panels and the optimizers. The one thing we didn't talk about when Kelly was here, and that is there's Iowa Renewable Energy loans, and they will grant you a loan when they have money available at a low 0% interest, and that, of course, free money for a farmer is always better than having to pay a bank rate interest. So, of course, I applied for that also.
Get some?
Well, yeah. Yeah, if it was by me, you would. Seriously, it's just applying, and then because I did not apply for a large amount, large percent, kept it under, is it 50%? And then I was sort of automatically granted it, but then you have to, but if you apply for a higher percentage on your project, then it's a longer time to get it. So, I think that's basically all.
Would you do it again?
I actually, on my home place where I live, we're planning on doing one soon. And yeah, that one particular one will be on the roof of a cattle shed rather than on the ground. You know,
There's only one drawback with that. We got the solar panels on top of the barn, and there's dust off the cattle. So some Mexicans and I have to get up there and watch them this summer.
well, in my case, it'd be some Norwegian. But in this particular case, it's an outfit, but it's been high-teched by my wife, and so there's only 4 horses that are around it, so it doesn't create the amount of dust like it would in that case. But that's a good point that you raised. Go ahead, Glenn.
Well, I'm Roger Eglin. I live south of Oshun. We dairy farm. I know quite a few of you in here. The only reason I'm here is because of her. She talked to my wife, and that's why I'm here.
I thought it was your wife's fault. She said yes.
Well, anyway, Dale Monroe was supposed to be here. He wouldn't do it. He's my partner. So we're not speakers, but we can tell you what we do. We milk cows, about 400 cows. Like Mainland back there, just built a new setup. There's a lot of them around. And Vic's here come to me and they said, oh, we can save you a lot of money. We'll put this hot water heater running for you. We go through 1,000 gallons of hot water a day. If you ever really checked how much water you use, it is really unreal. Our power bill is about $5,000 to $6,000 a month. I want to cut our power bill. You know, the power guys, the only discount I found with the power guys over the years is they don't want a discount. I said, if I pay early, do I get a discount? No. But I can put it on my Cabela card. So every year we charge lots of money on my Cabela card. The boys love it. They get new guns at Christmas at Cabela's. And so that's the only discount I see from the power company. So we got to kind of cut power use. So we put the system in. The water goes through the top, back down, and even on a normal day like today, it's probably coming in at 80% of what we need it to be heated up. Then we use the LP gas to take it the rest of the way. And it's kind of hard to see if they really made us any money because about the time we put it in, the power company raised their rates again. So it wasn't easy, you know, you couldn't see that this thing really make you any money right now. But we think it is. It's working pretty well. We've only had to have them out, what, 5-6 times? A couple times on it for little things, but I think you're going to see better and better systems all the time. But that's what we did with the hot water, heating hot water, and it does work. We are getting some dirt on the solar panels, which we're going to have to wash off once a year anyway. So, well, that's about all I know. Now, here's the...
Watch the dust off.
I don't know, we have these big sheds, and every year we got to go up there and wash them roofs off. I think as we're along a gravel road, and the dirt gets there, and the condensation off the cows, and the white roofs look black. And I think a lot of you guys have the same problem. You drive throughout the country and you'll see a lot of these big freestyle barns that are getting black.
How long have you had your system in?
About, what, 3 years?
And would you, if you were doing it over again, would you put it on the ground rather than on top of the building?
No, because we're limited to space and somebody will run into them up there underground.
So you'd rather climb up on top?
Well, I'll send somebody. No, they're really not that bad up there. I mean, we got scissor lifts and stuff, so they'll be able to wash them all day.
Do you have recouped your heat from the milk?
Yeah, we have thermistors and everything else you can possibly think of to cut our bills. We do go to a lot of new lighting. I just bought a bunch of lights from Langs, and now they tell me the bulbs are already outdated. They haven't even got them in yet. So be careful, we did that with our shop. We put in all the energy efficient lights. Becker sold them to us, fine. They tell you it's $40 a fixture. They forgot to tell you that the light bulbs are $9 and there's $900 worth of light bulbs. So price them because
Were they fluorescent or LED?
they were fluorescent, but the ballasts keep going out. They're T5s. Well, then the ballasts are covered by warranty, but not the trip charge or the labor to put them in. So
Well, the good news is, I guess this is sort of the good news, that LED lighting have come down a lot in price, and so now for new lighting installations, LEDs are pretty much the.
are they foolproof though? I mean, they told us about them T5s. Oh, they'll last you forever. Well, forever was 3 years.
Fool me once, shame on them.
Let me jump in real quickly too, right before Clyde, if that's okay. The solar thermal, what I didn't mention in the little diagram up there was talking about hot water, solar thermal from hot water heating, in this example. Solar thermal can also just heat buildings.
Yeah,
Radiant heat, and and Steve and Brandon out here, you can talk to them more about that. Shops are a good example. And we've done it in shops to do indoor radiant shops. People have it in their house, that can also do good work.
What's the pitch of your roof? You have them on the roof. You have solar panels?
Yeah, they're pretty steep. We had to put the braces back.
Oh, you pitched them up.
Yeah, you pitch them off the roof.
Stationary.
Yeah.
Snow pile up underneath there in the winter?
We haven't had any problem with it. They leave a gap underneath it.
How about a hailstorm? How do they take that?
Well,
They're rated.
they're rated, you're supposed to be able to hit them with a baseball bat.
Have you tried that?
Not yet.
I think the snow can pile up on your photovoltaics, but on your water, you're cycling water through there and that warms it. You don't have anything like that cycling through your PVs, and so you can pile up snow on that if they're on the roof. It's hard to get it off. We'll lose some of that.
Did you put up any bigger storage tanks for your hot water, say for something?
Yeah, we had to put in some 200-gallon tanks, and then it's got to recycle it through. We were going through a lot of towels, for washing cows off, and they were using a lot of hot water for that. Well, since then, we went to Airmark. They come out with 10,000 towels a week, like uniforms, and then they supply that, and that's working out even better than having hot water, because they worry about it. Something you might want to look into.
Well, we have quite a variety here, from fairly large farming operations to mine, which is, I'm just a small retired farmer actually. So I'm kind of a data geek. So what I'm going to give you is data, and I think the data kind of can be scaled to whatever you want. So this is kind of information about how the numbers that I have dealt with may relate to some things that you may be interested in. So my system is a 10.78 kilowatt system. It's a ground mount, primarily residential, because about 2/3 of our total electrical usage comes from our geothermal system for heating and cooling the house. Only about 8% of mine is actually attributable to farms, so I did not have any real opportunity to depreciate it. So the depreciation rules for me did not apply. Your mileage may vary depending on how you use it. So what I'm going to give you is some numbers about how the system has worked compared to what I planned. Because before I did this, I went through and did 2 years worth of careful analysis of every monthly bill and my meters and what knowledge I had of where my usage came from. I was in a situation where I had 2 meters, one of which was dedicated to the interruptible things like electric heating systems, resistance heating. The geothermal system, there's an auxiliary heating system which comes on as an electrical resistance heater when the geo can't keep up with the temperatures in the deepest parts of the winter. Second part of that is the garage heater. It's an electric resistance heater, and of course you have the water heater. Those had previously been on a separate meter and had the REC's dual fuel or an interruptible rate, which was half the rate of the regular meter. So I had to take that into consideration, and that affects my numbers. So you may or may not have that situation, but if you do, you need to be aware of something, and that is that you lose that benefit. And this is a Hawkeye REC. So anyway, my system, the size, rated size is 10.78. And when I was doing the estimates, I used the PV watts estimator online, which is the pvwatts.nrel.gov. And that allows you to put in any latitude, any point, and give yourself estimates of what the production is going to be based on any size that you want to put in. That, a couple of years ago when I used that, that was notoriously underrating the actual production. So that, you know, if you based your numbers on that, your production is actually going to be higher than what that number is. I just saw that they updated that. I ran the new estimate today, and it's much more accurate in what you can actually expect to receive in power from the solar panels relative to the rating. So my 10.78 kilowatt system, at that time the PV watts estimated that it would produce 13.3 kilowatts. The new rating is at 14.83. I had used the rating I'd been told by my installer to estimate about 12 to 13%, 14% above that for a realistic estimate of the output. So I used a number of 4.99. In reality, over the last almost 2 years, I put it in and went live in July of 2013. It's been about 15.62, which means that from my experience is that basically I'm running about 149% of the rated value of the panel. So if you put in a kilowatt, you can expect about 1.49, 1.5, 1.48% of that rated, 150% basically of the rated capacity. So you can use that I think probably has a pretty accurate estimate. Now that's based on 2 years, so there's been quite a bit of variability in the 2 years. But it's been a variability that I think points to that as being a reasonably accurate number. But if you want to be safe, use the new PV watts estimates, and you'll be right in the ballpark.
What was that website again?
I'm sorry?
What is that?
The website, pvwatts.nrel.gov, I believe is what it is.
You Google PV watts.
Search for PV watts,
Okay.
and then PV watts calculator.
Version 2.
Version 2, yeah, is a much more accurate estimate of what your output will be. Now, one of the things they have on there is that you can decide, you can put in what pitch you want it to be at. You know, if you're going to put it on a flat roof, or kind of a flat east roof, that's probably a neighborhood of 20 degrees or so, which is kind of like a typical house roof might be. And you can put in any percentage of tilt on that. So I did an analysis. I put in 5 degrees of tilt differences all the way from 20 up to 65% tilt. And what I found was that the recommendation I got was to put in a 35-degree tilt on my panels. And there is no month at which 35 degrees is the most efficient, but overall 35 degrees produces the optimal level of tilt, taking into consideration the entire variability of the sun throughout the season. So in this area, about 35% seems to be optimal.
You can also put in the compass orientation,
Yes.
so that if you're off south, well, you can put that.
That's correct. You can put in your orientation. I was directly south, so I just left that part. Yeah, you can do pretty good planning based upon the specs that you know. Yes.
Have they found that it makes any more, they save you more money? I've been told that usually when they have those mechanical devices, it doesn't really save you any money.
That's what I've heard too, and I think that's probably borne out that on the margins, the cost of doing that, automating that, probably is greater than what you'll gain from it. Because it turns out that even pitch is not as significant as you might think it is. The gain is on the margins, and whether or not you can make it up, I think depends on what the cost of doing that would be. Some people have just a manual adjustment, so they can adjust it twice a year. You know, that's probably.
They must not have very many panels then.
Well, they typically are on a big single post with maybe, 20 panels on a post, and then you can just do a single adjustment on that big post. Mine is not adjustable.
Wow.
Yeah.
And Lyle's definitely a data geek, you can tell. You can run PV watts and you can do a lot of that research, but of course, if you get a site assessment, when you go out and talk to the solar installers here, the site assessments will give you a lot of those numbers too. And then you're going to have to check them. And I should have mentioned, in talking about roof mount versus ground mount, a couple of these issues have come up that are relevant, because yeah, you can adjust the tilt. It can cost a little bit more maybe for the installers to put them on a ground mount. That is adjustable, but if you just adjust them spring and fall, even if you have a pretty good size array, that's not that much work. You know, you can potentially do that. But the other thing about ground mounts, maybe a bit more costly to install, you can take them off easy. If you don't have a Norwegian or a Mexican auntie, you might not want to go up on your roof for the snow, those snowstorms in the winter that might stick around for a while on the panels. And when you can reach them, you certainly can if you want to get out there.
And that snow can be significant.
One other thing with those that adjust themselves, there's more mechanics there.
Yep.
And so there's more potential for some mechanical problems.
Yeah, if it moves, it's going to fail sometime.
Yeah.
This is a question more for you than for the panel, and that is, what is the history on the modernization of these things? Improved efficiency after, get rid of the ones they just installed a year ago and introduced that?
Yeah, good question. And a big part of why we're here today is because the economics have changed so fast. And the economics have changed in part because we've developed an infrastructure. We're really fortunate to have an infrastructure of local contractors and installers who can do this well. Their costs have come down. The panel cost used to be a huge bulk of all the solar costs. The efficiencies and technologies actually haven't changed all that much in 20, 30, 40 years. They've improved. The efficiencies have improved. The big cost drops have been in the refined silicone and the inputs into that manufacturing. And that's been a global economic improvement, economies of scale again. So 5 years ago, we were at $8 or $9 a watt installed. Now we're at 3 or under. Okay, so it's come down, way down on the cost of the panels, on the cost of the, now, at least half of the cost of an installed PV system, or sometimes more, is everything else. Besides the panels, it's all the other infrastructure, it's the labor, it's everything else that goes into it. The technology really hasn't changed that much, and it is stable, and it is strong, and I don't know if, there are folks in the room maybe that have had panels for a long, long time. We have panels in Winneshiek County that were installed 30 years ago, and they're at 85% capacity right now with no maintenance, essentially. Maybe shoveling snow.
My understanding is that the first solar panels that were ever built are still running. I mean, they are extremely stable technology.
I just mentioned, we did put our first set of panels in about 1980. And the efficiency of those panels was rated at around 8%. And right now, I understand that they're inching up towards 20%, maybe 17, 18%, close to 20. So that is a technological advance right there.
No, I agree. But that's more incremental. 5 years ago, it was at 15%, now it's at 18 or 20%. So that continues to improve, but it's not the case that 2 years from now, it's going to be a world different. Things are going to continue changing, but probably not soon. So,
Are the panels made here in the U.S. or are they made in China?
a lot of them are, and talking to the installers, but most of them going up around here are. Go ahead.
Okay, so cost-wise, I'll give you some numbers here. So this, you can figure this was almost 2 years ago, so costs have come down. So on that approximately 10 to 11 kilowatt system, the system cost itself is about $38,000. I had to do about $2,200 of electrical work because of where I had to place things and that electrical work on that. REC has a cost, an engineering cost of $550 to analyze your system and give you the okay. I would permit at $50. My total gross cost was about $41,000. Of that, the federal tax credit was $12,313. I was in on the Iowa tax credit of $3,000 cap, not a $5,000 cap. So that's $3,000. So my total net cost is about $25,729. Now, if I estimate how much that's going to produce over a 25-year period, I should get about 390,500 kilowatts out of that over 25 years, which brings the cost of per kilowatt to about 6.6 cents. Now, one of the things that you do when you put in a solar system is that you buy ahead. You pay up front for kilowatts you're going to use in the future. So the question is, what is the cost of those kilowatts going to be in the future? Well, what I did is I calculated about a 5% increase per year on an annual compounding basis of electrical cost. So if my cost of these, everything I'm going to produce for the next 25 years is 6.6 cents per kilowatt, compounded at 5%, we should be paying 36.533 cents per kilowatt in 25 years. So, what percentage of my kilowatt usage at 36.33% am I actually creating at 6.6%? How much am I going to be able to sell back is the question. So as I calculated the return on my investment, taking into consideration my cost, the tax incentives, I calculated into that the assumption that I would have to replace $5,000 worth of inverters during that 25-year period. That's just a guess, who knows. I came up with a return over 25 years of 173% of my investment, which is a 6.9% return on an annual basis, which right now I think is difficult to come up with on a reliable basis in very many other investment strategies. So for my purposes, since I'm on the Hawkeye REC, not on Alliant, I did not get the Alliant rebate. So take into consideration the fact that I am now paying full rate for my garage heat, my auxiliary geothermal heat, and my water heater, not getting the discounted rates of half. That's a true cost to me. And that cost, I calculate at about $8,000 to $9,000 over 25 years. So that's about a $350 a year tariff that has been imposed on me by REC's reduction of my ability to use that as a reduction rate. That's a 1.4% per year reduction on my investment. So that's the tariff. And it increased my payback time by a year. The payback time for my system, as I calculated based upon my estimates of future costs, is just a little over 12 years. If you add back in the cost of the tax credit, if those would not have been received, it would have been about 19 years. So what I estimated is that I would be producing, based upon my historical record, I would be producing about 60% of my needs. Now that varies per year. Now last year, for instance, was extremely cold, since a lot of our usage is based on the geothermal needs. That means I was hit substantially harder by my electrical usage for fuel purposes. And I've actually produced 56% for the last 2 years. Now this year I think it's going to go back up an inch closer to the 60%. So one of the things that I also did was say, okay, I got to figure out how much I can afford to put in here. So one of them was the cost I could afford, or I perceived I could afford. I could justify all kinds of things in many different ways. But I also looked at the rate of return with various levels of how much of my anticipated usage I would be producing. And from my figures, the optimal level for me was about 50% of my needs being produced through solar gave me the optimum return on my investment. The closer I got to 100%, the lower my rate of return would be. It may be nice to produce 100% of what you use, but your cost of doing that on a marginal basis is actually higher. So those are my kind of numbers.
Is that figure in borrowed money, or is that figure in taking it out of the bank and paying for it?
Figure out the bank. I do not calculate any interest return on the money. There's a lot of people that are for hire. A lot of people are for hire.
So that REC did not allow you to keep your off-peak?
No. And if you are on REC and had that off-peak rate, calculate that in. It is substantial. It's a tariff.
Well,
that is not. And And the interesting part is that you tend to use that off-peak rate at the time when you're not actually producing,
Right.
excess producing, so.
My REC, I have a subtractive meter, which is off-peak. Keep off-peak, which if I get an electric vehicle, will be 3/4 of my load.
Sure.
Heating, cooling, electric hot water. In the electric vehicle, that'll be 3/4 of my load of off-peak.
Yep.
And they're interested in keeping off-peak.
It's interesting. Which REC is it?
Well, it's not even in the state. I'm down here, I'm from Minnesota.
Yeah, and it varies
So,
by REC.
I'm here for my son-in-law.
Yeah.
He's a farmer there in Boston.
It's a good point, because a lot of these policies are variable and varying, even between RECs, and RECs are adapting to this as more and more customers come online, and as Carlton said, we need to maintain those infrastructures there. The net metering issues, the variable rates, time of use pricing is going to work into this as well. Can you do time of use pricing with the solar system? So, these are great questions, and John is here. I think Pat Boyle is here too, also from Hawkeye. But yeah, let's continue the Q&A for all of these presenters now.
Can you comment on what the difference is with Alliant? Are you allowed to net meter?
You are. All utilities that cover this corner of the state, including Alliant, all IOUs, investor-owned utilities in Alliant and Mid-America in Iowa are required to offer net metering. And pretty much all RECs do offer net metering, but there are some differences in the policies. And there are also some caps on the system sizes that you can install.
And they vary by REC.
When you're looking at that REC and the differences in the policy with net metering, I mean, what are some of those differences that are out there?
In the net metering between
Yeah,
utilities?
between what the typical is that you'd see from Alliant or Mid-American versus what some of the RECs do with their net metering policy.
I know for a fact right now that I've got 4 meters in my small farm. I have 2 little wells on little adjacent places like a lot of people do to water cattle and stuff like that. And then I've got one for my house, and I have a sub meter like for my geothermal. I was told that first off, and I was working with Perry Novak initially on this, that they would not go ahead and carry any excess production over past the first of the year. They since rescinded that, but then they changed the rules. It says that we're going to go ahead and rescind, we're going to give you that back, but you can't have your sub meter, and you're still going to have to pay a meter charge on each meter that you have. Therefore, say that you make 1,000 kW over the course of a year, and you use, 950. None of that excess that you get produced is going to be able to be utilized for your paying your meters and stuff like that. You're only going to get paid on your whole bill for the hookup in other words, like my main meter at my house, I'll get any credit back from my house, but then my meters for my little wells and stuff like that I use, a few months a year, I get no credit on those. And I think that's bogus. They're making these rules without members discussing it. The meeting's coming up, and I think that y'all ought to go and voice your opinions about that as well.
No, it's a good point. And I think, being involved, RECs are member-owned.
Yeah, members supposedly.
Yeah, well, you do have a voice, and it's variable, and we're trying to have some of these conversations with the RECs too, but they're needing to adapt to rapidly changing conditions. So, one of the issues that's coming out here is how big a system do you want to install, and that can vary depending on your needs, but in general, the idea here with consumer-owned PV is don't install more than you're going to use, and keep it at some percentage below probably your total annual use for a given meter, and then essentially you're not going to run into problems of, oh, I made too much last year, I don't get anything for it, or I gave it away, or the utility doesn't give me anything for it. If you design your system for 80%, say, of your estimated annual use, you feed the grid, you take from the grid, it's a one-to-one credit, it's rolled over month to month in most cases, pretty much in all of our local utilities, and that works pretty well. But there are still issues of, what if you have multiple meters, what if you do happen to overproduce in a year, time of use pricing, and multiple rates. These issues are going to continue to be issues, and we probably aren't going to be able to get into all of them here or now. You're going to have to continue to talk with the REC and your installers about that.
Well, that's one big point to, I think, underline when you go, I know some of you are from this corner of Iowa, when you go back and talk to your utility about this, are they gonna allow you to virtually net meter? In other words, if you have 10 meters, can you put up one solar system at one that serves your needs for all 10 of them and have that be credited to all of your accounts? Or are they gonna say, nope, actually we'll only credit the meter that your solar system is hooked up behind? Right, so that's the difference between being able to virtually net meter your array to all your meters, or to having to literally have a one-to-one installed behind your meter directly attached.
Andy mentioned something about time of use, kilowatt, charge. And we all know, in the summertime, you hear on the radio about this is a peak alert. Well, the price for those, the electricity that RECs buys, is really high during those peak alerts, so they don't want us to use it. But as a solar producer, that's when my solar panel most likely will be producing about as good as it gets. And so oftentimes I hear, and you know, I'm connected with Farm Bureau, and so I go to a lot of meetings, I hear a lot of different opinions. And some say, well, you know, that solar energy is really hurting the RECs, or that solar energy is actually driving up his bill because the infrastructure cost. But the reality is that because I will help keep down the cost during the solar or the peak alerts, I'm reducing the cost to my neighbors because that cheap electricity that I'm overproducing more than I use will be going to my neighbors. And the RECs will be charging you a price that's higher than what they pay me or what they figure I would have. So, and unfortunately, you know, I've met with the Iowa REC board, the state REC board, and you know, they still have that mentality. It's changing, but that's what I talked about. So this whole solar thing is new for us. It's really new for them, and they have to figure out how this solar energy projects are going to fit into, you know, the contracts that they have, and so that they can remain sustainable also. So we have to keep, as somebody mentioned back there, we have to keep the conversation going with our RECs and our REC board members. And we have to make sure we have the right people on the REC boards that are open to hearing about how we can make this this work for both of us, because that's the most important thing. But as we also keep in mind that when we produce this energy, you know, I'm keeping the money in my own community. It's not going out to wherever Dairyland is or whatever, and all those. We're keeping it here at home.
Just a comment, the REC, which is Wisconsin and St. Andrews, just put up a huge solar array. It's owned by the people that they serve. You can only buy as much as what you use. But in that case, they centralized it. Instead of a whole lot of little installations, it's one big one. And they are working with everybody that they sell to. They haven't quite got it all sold out yet, but it's real close. So if you've got some issues with REC, maybe they want to copy what went on over there. And everybody doesn't have to reinvent the wheel.
Hawkeye REC has built a small one up there in Cresco. And I looked into it before I put up my own. And it made, you know, I talked it over with my banker and some other people, and you know, when you put the pencil to it, I didn't feel that it made sense for me personally. Now, there's others I'm sure that maybe do, I don't know. But I know also, if anybody has interest, they still have a fair bit of that solar array up there for sale.
I was just going to comment on that. Those rates, your energy audits will include an energy rate analysis, right? So that you're going to be able to figure out the details of, you know, how much you're paying on this meter and how much you're paying on this meter, and what's the true cost to switching and going solar, if that's what you're doing.
Yep, right.
And installers should be able to help you figure that out too.
Exactly. When we do whole farm energy analysis, we'll be looking into those details, and we will likely turn to our installers for further analysis.
I got a question maybe for Lyle or for somebody from Hawkeye or CPAC here. The last 10 years, how much has price per kilowatt, energy per year, what percentage has it went up?
I don't know that.
Before I put mine up, I was told, didn't see the right, that it went up 20%. I mean, 5% per year for like 20 years.
That's why I use that number. I think that's probably fairly accurate.
But I've never had it, nobody never actually told me, and never had it.
Yeah, I teach at Luther College and work closely with facilities folks there. And, for a while, our average energy costs, especially on electricity, was going up 7% per year. Then after the recession, things changed a little bit, and it's been only going up at about 2.5% to 3% right now. But for those of us who are Alliant Energy customers, Alliant is building a new gas-fired power plant in Marshalltown. And when they do, that'll cost them a lot of money, and they'll pass that cost on to ratepayers. So I think they've told us to expect it's somewhere between a 5 to a 10% rate hike for that particular project. And then, of course, as fuel costs go up and down, they pass those on to the ratepayers. So one of the reasons why Luther's done what we've done is simply just trying to get a handle on our rising energy costs. And so for our modeling, Lyle was talking about his, he figured 5%, we figured 4% on our wind project, and now on the solar stuff we've been doing, we've been figuring an increase of 3% on our Alliant electricity charges going forward. And I don't know if we'll be right or not, but you have to think about that.
Yeah.
Well, no, right. So we're just assuming if we're paying, let's say, an average cost of 7 cents a kilowatt hour, we're assuming that's going to go up at least 3% a year, as we think about a 25-year PV project. And that's how we figure out whether we're going to save any money by investing in PV.
Yeah, anybody can make their own guess on what the cost of oil and gas and coal are going to be.
Yeah.
And carbon.
Right.
You mentioned the possibility in the near future of battery storage. Yep. So you could actually cut from the grid if you needed to. But what about the possibility of dedicated solar for electric vehicles? Yep. Whether it be a plug-in or a volt or something like that. Are you looking at the economics of that? And, it may be that you don't have to deal so much with the grid thing. Has anybody installed one specifically for this?
Anyone here have an electric vehicle? There are some local folks. Yes. There are local folks who have electric vehicles, some all electric, some of the hybrids, and who are charging with their own solar systems. And the economics, can obviously work in favor of another power source. The cost per mile of driving an electric vehicle based on electricity, whether it's your own or grid purchased, is way below gasoline. So it's a lot cheaper to drive. Of course, they're more expensive to buy up front. But the other part of it in charging and using your own vehicle essentially as your batteries, as your surplus power, you have to have it parked there and plugged in right when you're generating your power. Unless you're going to have some other storage then to charge it from. So in some cases, it's going to work great in some cases and for some folks and less well in other cases. If you're generating your power in the mid-afternoon and your car is off at work, it may not work so well.
But if you're on the grid and you size it so that you're producing all your electricity from it, and then you have a hybrid car, then you'll never go above that and have to give away electricity.
Right. Absolutely.
Kristen?
Do you guys by chance know what the average payoff is per panel or on the average system?
Well, again, that depends on what your rebate and credit capabilities are. In my case, as I said, with the tax credits, mine is about 12 years. And my brother-in-law puts one in, his is probably about 5 years because he was on Alliance and got the rebate. Now, on the other hand, it's, as Kelly mentioned, unless you're able to take advantage of the tax credits, effectively, you will not get that tax credit. And many people, especially older people in Iowa, that may not apply to farmers, but many older people do not pay Iowa taxes because Social Security is not taxed and pensions are not taxed up to $6,000 per person. So it's sometimes difficult for people in retirement age to actually make use of Iowa tax credits because they have no tax to write it off against. And that has to be considered too, because if you don't get the tax credit, well, that increases your actual cost by the amount that you don't get. So non-refundable tax credit.
And the size of what you're doing is going to matter too, right? So we toured Dwayne and Stacy Bushman's farm over there. They put a huge array, I can't remember what the water size was, but it was on a chicken farm, a large poultry facility. I think he was calculating his payback to be between 2 and 3 years, like 3 years, which is very, very good. But also, you have a huge array like that, then you're getting a little bit, it's less price up front per gallon installed too, because you've reached the economies of scale. So you're getting it cheaper per watt installed.
And depreciation is a big part of that. That's why ag applications for operational farms, currently operating farms that have significant electric usage are oftentimes good. If you can use the tax credit, if you can use the depreciation, and with the low cost right now, yeah, those paybacks, simple paybacks can be 2, 3, 4 years, but not in all cases.
Lyle, question for you with your array.
I'm sorry?
A question for your, how your array was set up. How many panels and how many strings did you break it up into?
We have 44 panels, 11 per string. We're using the central inverters. Each central inverter can handle 2 strings, so it's essentially 2 inverters in one. So we have essentially 4 inverters in 2 boxes, 11 panels per string. One of the reasons, like Carlton mentioned, his panels are independent. Do you have the microinverter or do you have the oscillator? Microinverter? Yeah. And microinverters cost more, but they allow each panel to output its own production, not based upon the string. It's more, a string of them is more like a serial production, where if one of them drops, the whole string drops. Part of the reason you might want to go to the microinverters is because you may have shading issues. Shading issues will cause the whole string to drop to the most shaded unit on that string. In my particular case, that is a marginal problem at the very end of the day, so I didn't think it was worth it. Whether or not they're actually more efficient in the microinverters, that's the same with the microinverters. I can't say that is or is not the case because I don't have them. So I can't make a one-to-one comparison. I can just tell you the numbers that are based on mine, and I'm satisfied with it for my cost purposes. And I think people with microinverters are also satisfied with them. So, I think you make your choice there.
On your question on the payback, now the one that I put up, it's figured at the 7 year, and the one that I'm going to put in up, figured around the 5 year.
We're going to take 2 more questions. We're going to take 2 more and then adjourn, but I'd like to pick on Dennis Moshik really quick. Dennis told me I could do that. I didn't call his wife to ask, like I did. But Dennis, I was wondering if you could maybe just to speak to the point about efficiency a little bit, maybe talk briefly about your experience on your farm with some of the changes you made and how that's changed your results over there.
Well, we did a complete energy audit 2 years ago on our farm. We upgraded all our motors. We were milking about 150 cows. Now we're up to about 400. We milk 3 times a day. So we changed a lot. Our water, we recycle now 3 different times. We run it through a plate cooler system, all our milk, and our milk gets cooled down from 98, 99 degrees down to 56 when it hits our bulk tank. Then that water is pumped underground into a 3,000 gallon storage tank. That storage tank, all that warm water is watering all the waters for our dairy operation. And when you have warm water available for your dairy cows, you will see an increase in water intake, which we feel we've seen about 1 to 3 pounds per cow per day more milk production that way. Then we use the water after watering the cows. We have a 2-stage manure system where we're separating our We have sand bedding, and then the liquid. The water gets reused again to wash our freestall barn. And so that's the third cycle it goes through, and then from there, it gets hauled out, back out on our fields. Also, our well pump, our milker pump, a lot of our pumps, we went to all variable speed. Our fan system that we're going to be installing in our barn right now, it's all going to be thermostat controlled and be on variable speed control. So as the temperature rises, the fans will kick in and they'll start at a lower level, and as it warms up, it'll increase. So you're not taking that big blast of electricity at one time. We also changed a lot of our lighting. Went to all LED lights on the whole farm. I guess I worked with NRC or NRCS on quite a bit of it, and I talked to different ones on energy audits, and they helped me out in a lot of ways, and we seen what was available for rebates. I was pretty happy with the whole project. We got about $60,000 in rebates back on our audit, and before our expansion, we were seeing probably $300 a month less on our electric bill. But that's all changed now because, you know, with our expansion, it's gone up. But it just makes a lot of things a lot more efficient.
All right, let's take maybe one or two more questions, and then we'll continue this conversation and move out to the hallway where there's food for us and installers and everybody to talk to.
Just out of curiosity, we're gonna introduce all of the exhibitors?
Yeah,
We should do that, yeah, right, as we break. Final questions for our panelists. Well, go ahead.
I have a comment. I haven't heard anybody speak to the hidden cost of generating conventional electricity, the cost that we don't see in our checkbook. Speak to it.
Very true. Some of those costs, the environmental costs, climate costs, are likely to be incorporated in the electrical costs going forward that we've been talking about.
I think Carlson spoke to that. The reasons to do this, many of the things that he said, that is implied but not specifically stated. That some of the reasons why we choose to do this, you know, you don't have to have your own reasons, but for any of us, it's to address those very things. We don't pay the actual cost of things. We pretend that those costs don't exist. And because we have a hard time calculating them, we don't build them into our prices. And when you don't build them into your prices, you don't think they exist, and you treat whatever it is, the whole environment as something that is expendable and doesn't have any cost to it going forward. Like we have no impact on it. We have a huge impact. And that's one of the things that drives many people to this, is that they want to try to figure out a way that they can address it with outside the economy that fails to do so. Thank you for that.
And we might pay for some of those costs secondarily as
Absolutely.
taxpayers when we have to go in and remediate sites that have been
Yes.
damaged by those things, but we don't see that in our energy bill. We see
Right.
that.
And we tend to socialize those costs by moving those costs to everybody when they should have been paid out front.
Study done on public television, coal,
Absolutely.
the cleaner plants, a lot of dirty ones around. And you can go anywhere from 2 to 4 times as much of those costs for insurance for coal power. We are not paying into the public health sector as well as the environmental sector.
And in this county, and Albuquerque County, and some of the counties in Minnesota, frac sand, applications of frac sand on our environment, extracting frac sand from our beautiful hills here to pay, or to provide the sand for the fracking to generate the natural gas that's used to fire the new electrical plants. That's a real cost that we will bear that nobody even sees if we're not careful.
I'd like to just say, you know, on my system, it shoots something or other to my internet And so I can go on the internet every night if I want to see how much my system has produced. That's always kind of fun to, you know, you look at it and go, oh, I am making some money. But another thing at the bottom, it says, you know, something about the carbon credit of so many trees, and you know, I'll tell you this, it'd be a lot cheaper to plant 47 or 46 trees, but that's not what I did, and I'm glad that this is working this way too. So
Yeah, and
it does have a positive.
It does, and the other thing that you mentioned there is the monitoring system. All these have monitoring systems of some type. And the thing about monitoring is, once you start watching numbers, it makes you more aware of numbers. And when you see those numbers, you want to stage the numbers that you think are valuable. You want to optimize the numbers on the other side. It's just like driving a fuel-efficient car that shows you the mileage on a regular, real-time basis. It's like a video game, and these are like video games. You want to optimize the numbers that make you the most money or make you feel the best about the thing that you've done.
But the thing about the tax thing is, unless you show a profit, there ain't no tax for it. So you gotta show a profit. And with $15 milk and $3 corn, not a lot of profit.
So you have to watch the tax.
You gotta be some profit.
Last comment, David, and then we'll.
Yeah, I wondered if you'd comment about the comparison costs of hooking up to the grid versus using batteries, and what the future of that might be.
Can I comment on that one? Okay. The problem that most of us would have not hooking up to not hooking up to the grid is that few of us can put in a system that can meet our peak demands of motor starts. When a motor starts, it has a surge, and we cannot afford, nobody can afford to build for their peak usage. And especially on farms that are loaded with motors. Your peak usage is the maximum that you might have when all the motors turn on at one time, that might potentially turn on at one time. Or all the things that suck electricity. You can afford to buy a peak for that. Now, you can afford to put in batteries to cover some things, but for the same reason most utilities can't cover all their peaks. They have to buy from somebody else. When you spread them around, you can afford the peaks, but then eventually it's hard to afford. That's what
Yeah, and then the other side of that, it's a good point, because you know, if you're going to be off grid, you have to have your max load, which may be 100 times more than your normal load. But on the flip side, if you don't have super high peaks, if you've got a fairly even load, and at some point you're thinking, hey, I want to be off grid. I know you all have had batteries for a long, long time and are off grid. And if anybody really wants to talk off grid, David and Perry over here, since he's spoken up about it, have experience with that. Economically, it's a really exciting issue right now. It's not one that utilities are excited about or one that we're promoting necessarily that everyone go off grid. The grid defection is becoming an issue in the 5 to 10 year horizon because batteries at the national level have become much more efficient, just like solar panels have. And the costs now are just falling off that steep cost curve like solar panels did 5 years ago. So as battery storage right now is very expensive, the economics that we talked about for regular solar PV are not there. But their costs are just falling off the shoulder. And the PV panels did this over the last 5 years. Now they're down here in the lower slope. So battery storage is just up here. And it is starting to fall off the slope. So over the next 5 years probably, where's it going to go? We don't know. But as it gets down here, and it is economical for a lot of folks, and depending on your situation in a business, a farm, a home, to buy battery banks to have storage. And if you don't have super high peak loads, how many and who and what kinds of operations will start putting in their own storage systems economically and then just disconnecting from the grid?
Well,
this isn't something we're promoting, but it's out there, and it's something you're alluding to.
and I guess all I would say is I think it would be actually an opportunity for utilities to work with their customers to invest in battery storage to shave peaks at the most expensive time of the year when it does cost the utility, whether it's an investor-owned or a customer-owned utility to buy power. Now, if you've got battery backup that takes a lot of stress off of their system. They don't have to go out there and buy that expensive power. So if I were a utility, that's what I think I would be thinking about is as that slope comes down, how do I incentivize my customers to invest in solar plus storage to help the whole utility? And that's especially true for RECs. So figure on a workshop here. I'm on the board of the energy district, so just figure on another workshop here in about 5 years to talk about batteries.
Maybe sooner. All right.
Yeah, maybe sooner.
This has been great discussion, but we can continue it in the hallway. We can introduce themselves, talk really briefly about the technology they do, and then I'm going to share the winners of the LED drawing. I know you've all been waiting for this. And then we'll adjourn to the hallway. So installers, go ahead. Yeah, moving installers up front. With the REAP grant program, and then we'll go to our installers.
I'm Norman Burst of USDA Rural Development, and the sister agency to the Farm Service Agency, or the NRCS. I'm located out of Waverly, but I deal with 10 northeast Iowa counties, so roughly Blackhawk County North and Blackhawk County East. Our program has a grant program called the Rural Energy for America program. It can grant up to 25% of the eligible project cost, not to exceed $500,000 for renewable energy, not to exceed $250,000 for energy efficiency improvements. Eligible applicants are limited to farmers or small businesses defined by SBA, which is probably 90% of the businesses in Iowa. This big stipulation in our program, especially when we're talking renewable energy, is our program does not allow the energy that is produced to be used for residential purposes. So somehow in the application process, we need to segregate out the energy usage, either by installing a separate meter, doing an energy audit that would segregate how much energy is used by the residents, so that we can define that what is being produced is most likely going to be for the business side of the meter and so forth.
Hi, I'm Dennis Potratz with Go Solar in Decorah. We've been installing solar wind generators, small wind generators in eastern Iowa since 1996. I was the first nationally certified installer in the state of Iowa. We work with a lot of different manufacturers and products and really base our approach on what works best for the customer, each customer's needs. And as a small company, we often cooperate with the customer, allowing them to participate or including their personal subcontractors in getting the installation done. We have a long list of satisfied customers that extends for decades and continues to grow.
My name is Joel Teslo. I'm with Decorah Electric in Decorah, Iowa. We've been an electrical contractor for going on 15 years now. We got into the solar business about 2.5 years ago due to the popularity of it. Current customers of ours requesting us to do these projects. So it's been a good business for us. We've done about 60 projects in 2 years. And we do pretty much the whole spectrum. Grid tie battery backup, off-grid, string inverters, microinverters, all the products that go with the industry. We can give a turnkey system, being we are an electrical contractor. We're licensed in Iowa, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. So the boundaries are not limited by that. So.
John Blake, Home Blake Electric, we're out of Postville. I've been in business since 2008. Been installing solar since about 2010. NAPSEP certified. We use American-made solar modules, mostly microinverters, depends on the situation. We do the whole installation ourselves, we don't subcontract any of it. It gives you one person to go to if you ever have issues.
Hi, I'm Brandon Schmidt. I'm out of Decorah. I've been in the solar industry since, since 80, I guess. I mainly focus on solar thermal. I also do energy consulting, green building, working on a net zero home in Marion. Large PV system, large solar thermal system, and you know, there's a lot of great things out there with solar, and things are changing. I've seen a lot of big changes. The technology is actually pretty standard. It's been for long years, and prices going down with different manufacturing processes. Everything's, you know, I just had a chance to revisit some old systems that I installed a few years ago, you know, running great, and you know, like just a simple solar hot water for people's houses. You know, that's roughly about 20% of their energy use, and so you know, I asked people, would you like to have 20% back from what you invested in energy in the last 30 years? And that's a pretty significant chunk of money. And also, you know, you get to see what's going on. I mean, you have that satisfaction of seeing your own system right there.
I'm Steve Fleming with Bixie and Plumbing in Decorah. We've been a HVAC contractor since 1936. We specialize in a lot of things, but as far as solar hydronics, what we're looking for to make hot water and radiant floor heating, and we'd be happy to customize the job to what you're looking for.
And one thing about solar thermal, we can get started tomorrow. We don't need the permits and all the line connections that PV does.
My name is Russell with Trade and Black Electric. I've been an electrical contractor for 30 plus years. We're doing started solar about 2.5 years ago. We're just over 800 kW that we've installed in that time period. Anywhere from micro inverters to string inverters to a new hybrid system of solar excellence.
My name is Tom Bossman. I was raised on a farm near Decorah, and I did construction work and farm for several years. And then I started my own business 35 years ago, and I built my business on hard work, honesty, and common sense. My wife Barbara and sons George and Travis work along with me, so we're a family company. 5 years ago, we went to schooling on renewable energies and green building, renewable energies, sustainable. One of the topics was PV solar, so that really struck my interest. So I did a lot of research on that, and we've been installing solar now for the last 2 years. And we use the best products and the best companies because we plan on being around for years to come. So, thanks.
Tyler Anderson of Ireland and Solar.